At exactly 7:18 on a rainy Tuesday morning, Daniel stood inside a crowded convenience store 2 streets away from the train station. He was 34 years old, worked as a customer support representative, and earned what most people would call a decent salary. He bought a sandwich, a bottle of soda, chewing gum, and a packet of chips. The cashier smiled, scanned everything, and said, "That'll be $50. Daniel tapped his card without thinking. 5 seconds later, he walked away. He never remembered that purchase again. Yet 12 months later, that forgotten $50 would quietly explain why his bank account never seemed to grow. Most people believe saving money is about earning more. That sounds reasonable. It even feels true. But what if the biggest difference between people who steadily build wealth and people who constantly wonder where their money went isn't their income at all? What if it is a decision so small that it almost never feels important enough to notice? That hidden decision is what this story is really about. Because the most powerful savings habit rarely announces itself. It works quietly, like planting one tiny seed every week without realizing you are growing an entire forest. That seed is the $50 rule. But before we understand why it works, we have to understand why most people never notice the seeds they are throwing away. Daniel wasn't irresponsible. He paid his rent on time. His bills were current. He avoided debt whenever he could. He wasn't buying luxury watches or expensive vacations. His spending looked completely normal. Coffee with coworkers, a quick online order after work, food delivery on nights he felt tired, a gadget that was on sale, a birthday gift, streaming subscriptions he barely used. Nothing looked dangerous. Nothing looked expensive. Nothing looked like the reason he couldn't save. That is exactly why it was dangerous. The human brain is remarkably good at detecting large losses. Lose $5,000 in one day, and you will probably remember it for years. Spend $50 20 different times, and your brain files each purchase into a different mental folder. Each decision feels harmless because it is judged alone. Psychologists call this narrow framing. Instead of seeing $1,000 disappearing over time, we see 20 unrelated purchases. Each one looks too small to matter. Together, they quietly shape an entire financial future. Imagine standing beside a small river. Every few minutes, someone pours a single cup of water into it. One cup changes nothing. Neither does the second. Or the 10th. But leave that river alone for months, and it becomes impossible to ignore how much water has accumulated. Money behaves the same way. Wealth is rarely built by dramatic moments. It is usually built by repeated moments that barely feel important. That is the river metaphor. Every dollar is a drop. Every habit is a current. Every repeated decision changes the direction of where the river eventually flows. Now meet Sarah. She lived only 10 minutes away from Daniel. She earned almost the same salary. She had similar bills, similar responsibilities, similar goals. From the outside, their financial lives looked almost identical. But Sarah followed one personal rule. Whenever she wanted to spend $50 or more on something that wasn't necessary, she waited 48 hours. She wasn't asking herself whether she could afford it. She asked a different question. Will I still be excited about this in 2 days? Sometimes the answer was yes. Many times it wasn't. Those forgotten purchases never happened. The money stayed where it was. Not because Sarah was forcing herself to suffer, because time quietly separated impulse from intention. Behavioral economists have long observed that people consistently place more value on immediate rewards than future rewards. This tendency is called present bias. The pleasure arrives now. The consequences arrive later. Our brains naturally exaggerate what is happening today while discounting what tomorrow might feel like. Retail stores understand this better than most customers. Limited time offers, countdown timers, flash sales, only 3 left. All of them create urgency because urgency weakens reflection. Reflection is where better decisions are born. The $50 rule restores reflection. It inserts a small pause between emotion and action. That pause often becomes the most profitable part of the purchase. History offers a surprising lesson here. Benjamin Franklin once wrote that little leaks sink great ships. He wasn't only talking about boats. He understood something timeless. Great losses often begin with tiny openings that nobody thinks are worth fixing. Money works exactly like that. The biggest financial problems rarely begin with one spectacular mistake. They begin with hundreds of ordinary decisions that never seemed important enough to question. Daniel eventually discovered this himself. One Saturday afternoon, he downloaded a year's worth of bank statements. He expected to find one major problem. Instead, he found dozens of tiny ones. Restaurant visits under $60, late-night online shopping, subscription renewals, impulse purchases, convenience spending. None looked alarming. Together, they totaled more than $8,000. He stared at the screen for several minutes, not because he was shocked by any individual purchase, because he had never seen the entire river before. That realization changed everything. The following month, Daniel didn't create a complicated budget. He didn't stop enjoying life. He didn't promise to never spend again. He simply adopted Sarah's rule. Every optional purchase above $50 waited 2 days. Sometimes he still bought it. Sometimes he forgot about it completely. Something unexpected happened. He became more intentional even when he eventually spent the money. Waiting didn't reduce his happiness. It improved the quality of what he chose. Researchers studying delayed gratification have repeatedly found that creating even brief delays can significantly reduce impulsive decisions. Not because people lose the ability to enjoy buying things, because emotional intensity naturally fades with time. When excitement cools, judgment becomes clearer. That tiny pause gives logic enough space to join the conversation. The rule also creates another hidden advantage. Every purchase that survives 48 hours usually matters more. Instead of filling life with random objects, your money begins collecting experiences, tools, and opportunities that continue adding value long after the excitement of buying has disappeared. The river changes direction, drop by drop, decision by decision. People often ask how wealthy families seem to build financial security almost quietly. The answer is rarely one brilliant investment. It is usually countless invisible decisions that protected money before it ever needed to grow. Saving is not only about accumulation. It is about preservation. Money that never leaves your account becomes capital. Capital becomes opportunity. Opportunity becomes freedom. Freedom becomes choices that most people assume only high incomes can buy. That is why the $50 rule matters. It is not really about $50. It is about protecting your future from your present emotions. It teaches your money to wait. And money that learns to wait often learns to multiply. 12 months after that rainy Tuesday morning, Daniel returned to the same convenience store. The cashier didn't remember him. The shelves looked the same. The drinks were still cold. The sandwiches were still lined up behind the glass. Nothing about the store had changed. But Daniel had. He still bought what he genuinely needed. He still enjoyed spending on things that truly mattered. The difference was invisible to everyone except his bank account. Hundreds of tiny decisions had quietly become thousands of dollars. Not through sacrifice, not through luck, through awareness. Looking back, Daniel realized the biggest financial lesson of the year had never been about finding extra money. It had been about noticing the river he had been feeding every single day. Every $50 decision had been another drop. Some drops flowed toward temporary satisfaction. Others flowed toward lasting security. Once he understood where the river was going, changing its direction became surprisingly simple. That may be the most important truth about building wealth. Your future is rarely shaped by one dramatic financial decision. It is shaped by ordinary moments that seem too small to matter, until one day you discover they mattered more than anything else. The $50 rule is not magic. It will not make you rich overnight. It will not replace investing, increasing your income, or building long-term financial skills. But it does something just as valuable. It teaches you to recognize the difference between wanting something now and wanting a better life later. That difference is where quiet wealth begins. And like every river, it starts with a single drop.